everyone. Thank you for joining our first session of On Point with TRC. I am Furqan Amin, an editor. I'm an editor with the Reporters Collective. I oversee much of the collaboration, commissioning, and some innovation that happens here. With me today is my colleague Tapasya, who is a reporter at TRC and covers a range of subjects, including political economy, environment, among others. Tapasya will be helping me in co-hosting and moderating this session. I guess many of you here know about us, about the collective, but for those who don't, we are a small group of like-minded journalists who focus on investigative and deep dive journalism in India. And this session On Point with TRC is our attempt to bring subject and industry experts to help people like us, journalists and researchers, to understand things better, or to simply share their work with us. And basically to do the same, joining us today is Kiran Garimella. Kiran is an assistant professor at Rutgers University. He has a PhD in computer science from Aalto University and has done postdoctoral fellowships at MIT in the US and EPFL in Switzerland. As we've been promoting, Kiran's work deals with using large-scale social media data to study social issues such as political polarization, disinformation, and hate speech. And today, Kiran will talk more about it, but today we'll be focusing more on disinformation and hate speech campaigns within WhatsApp and other encrypted platforms. And before I request Kiran to take over, I would like to appeal everyone to consider donating to the collective. Our investigations, these sessions, these talks are only possible with your support. I guess that is it. Over to you, Kiran.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me, and really excited to be here and share some of this work. So I'm an academic, it's probably a new audience for me. I usually give talks and talk about my research for an academic audience. So today I'm going to talk about WhatsApp particularly and my work in this space over the last few years. I'm going to talk about a bunch of things, including misinformation. I just included misinformation in the title, but it's going to be about disinformation, hate speech, political propaganda, and a bunch of other ways in which political parties in India and elsewhere are using WhatsApp. One of the main reasons why WhatsApp is interesting is WhatsApp, or in particular, encrypted social networks, is when we think of social networks, we don't necessarily think of chat apps like, all of these, WhatsApp, Messenger, Viber, Telegram, Signal, Line, almost all of us probably are on WhatsApp, but if not WhatsApp, one of these platforms. And a lot of these platforms are end-to-end encrypted, right? So that is a key aspect of some of these platforms. Very quickly, what end-to-end encryption means, because this has implications on what we can do with studying issues on these platforms. So let's say on a typical social network, let's say your Facebook, if Bob sends a message to Alice, the message is first delivered to Facebook social network, and Facebook the server can see and read what the message is, so they know, okay, Bob sent a message that says hello Alice to Alice, right? In the case of an encrypted social network like WhatsApp, what happens is the message is first encrypted on Bob's side and decrypted on Alice's side. So the social network only sees this sort of garbled text. They cannot tell what the content of the message that Bob sent to Alice. They only know, Bob sent a message to Alice. They don't know what is in the message, right? Like it could be, hey, Alice, or it could be, let's go and hurt someone or something like that, right? So it could, and this sort of implications for moderation are very important when it comes to misinformation. And particularly in the case of a country like India, misinformation has had offline consequences, right? Like, I don't know how many of you are aware, but there's dozens of people who were killed because of rumors that spread on WhatsApp. And this is not just in India. So this is mainly, this was a spate of incidents in 5-6 years ago when a rumor about child kidnapping in villages in India just spread like wildfire, spreading on WhatsApp. So we knew the video and we knew what was spreading and how it was spreading, but nothing could be done because of end-to-end encryption. And the same rumor about child kidnapping also spread on other platforms, other countries. So this is in Mexico. It led to similar consequences, like offline people getting hurt and so on. Right. The other issue with encryption and lack of moderation is that there's a lot of things like propaganda and organization politically happening on WhatsApp. So some of this is already public. People know. So for instance, this is from India. This is old news already, 2020, where the BJP was claiming to have tens of thousands of WhatsApp groups just for one local election, like in Bihar, right? And this is, by now it's very well known. There's lots of journalistic pieces written on it. It's probably very, very large number, hundreds of thousands, if not more. WhatsApp groups created by just one political party. The other political parties also are part of the game, but I don't know the level and the impact that they have. But the BJP is very, very good at this. So the same is the situation in Brazil, where again, like the political party run by the far right party there, similarly created tons of WhatsApp groups and had a lot of impact. So this is a video from Brazil. This is a guy showing off the messages that they're getting on their WhatsApp phone, right? These are all groups that they're getting messages from, and the guy is Bolsonaro. He's showing off how many groups they have and the volume of messages that they're getting on those groups. So this is not just an India-related phenomenon. Okay, so in terms of what can be done, right? We know that there is misinformation. We know what types of misinformation, at least qualitatively, has led to these sorts of riots and lynchings and things like that. We know that there is, political propaganda happening, and WhatsApp knows that. BJP is advertising this publicly. Other political parties also advertise this publicly. So one thing WhatsApp says is we cannot do much due to encryption, right? Meaning, like I said in the beginning, so if A sends a message to B, they cannot see the content of the message. They can only say A sent a message to B. So you cannot tell if the message is propaganda, is hateful, misinformation, rumor. They cannot tell that, right? So because of that, they're not able to do. They're not able to take it down, or they're not able to downrank it, or they're not able to stop the spread. Things like that. So they are not able to do. This is what I mean by moderation, and especially the Indian government, right? Has been on this aspect of if you're not able to stop the spread of certain types of misinformation, you should break encryption, right? So this is how the conversation about moderation of WhatsApp has been, right? Especially in the context of in genuine concerns, illegal activity on WhatsApp, so for instance, child sex abuse or sex trafficking or things like that also happening because of encryption. WhatsApp is not able to do anything, and so the discussion has just been like this. And so this work, my objective is to understand, provide some evidence, get some data to show, what is the prevalence of issues like misinformation on WhatsApp, right? And what can be done to prevent such misinformation and so on. So there's a bunch of questions that we plan to answer using some sort of data and evidence. Okay, so particularly in terms of misinformation, there's all these questions about, who's producing it, who's consuming it, how is it spread, what is being spread, how widely is it spread, what can be done to stop it, right? And the idea with this talk is to answer some of these questions at a population level, meaning, we want to get clear samples from WhatsApp in a way to say, okay, this is the amount of misinformation that people are consuming. This is how it is spreading, at a population level, meaning, a large number of people, the patterns of consumption, spread behavior, and things like that at a population level. So that's the idea with this study. Obviously, just before I go into the talk, like the talk is going to have three pieces. So first is the data collection, like where I'm going to talk about like what we did, how did we collect data from WhatsApp. The second is going to talk about the prevalence of misinformation, hate speech, propaganda, and how, for instance, some political parties are using WhatsApp in a very creative but also destructive way to spread propaganda. So the finding here is that, there is a lot of misinformation and hate speech, which obviously, a lot of us anecdotally feel like, we're getting a lot of misinformation. We have some data that shows how much of that it is. It's not a lot, but it's also not small. I'll show you the results in a second. And finally, we'll talk a bit about how journalists can use, some of these insights, but also can make use of some of the tools that, my group is developing to study WhatsApp and, understand how information is spreading on WhatsApp. And, all of us know the context that how big WhatsApp is and how important WhatsApp is in our context. But, we really don't either ignore it because we are not able to study it, or we just cannot study it, right? Like, or study it in a systematic way. So this kind of work tries to provide some answers to questions like that. So that's the third part. Okay, let's talk about data collection on WhatsApp. Obviously, data collection of WhatsApp is extremely hard. One of the key aspects here is end-to-end encryption, because of which even the platform does not have this data, right? Like, so, they know, again, because of encryption, they know I sent a message to Tapasya, but they don't know what the message content is. So, take it overall, they really don't know what is being consumed, what is being shared on their platform. And because of that, there's no, programmatic ways to collect data. And most of this is private data anyway, right? Like, so this is, most of WhatsApp is one-to-one communication. There's some group communication, but, it's mostly private data. And so the model we developed for data collection on WhatsApp is through this model called data donation, which is a privacy preserving opt-in model, meaning the users are opting in and saying, okay, I will give you my data. So this is all users choosing to donate their data. Particularly, we are requesting users to give us access to their WhatsApp group. So we're not requesting access to individual chats. We're saying, okay, give us access for research to the WhatsApp groups that you are a part of. Okay, and this is done, the data collection is done, like the consent process and getting the actual data is done through an on-ground survey in various parts of India and Brazil. In India, we have done this primarily in UP, in multiple parts of UP. And in Brazil, it was done in Sao Paulo, which is the biggest city in Brazil. Okay, so how does that work? So the actual donation process is built on top of this tool that we built. So this is a tool that is a web-based tool that allows us to collect private WhatsApp data in a legal, ethical, and practical way. Technically, this is like a clone of web WhatsApp. So if you use WhatsApp, if you use web WhatsApp on the web, basically what you do is you go to web.whatsapp.com. There's a QR code. You scan that QR code, right? Like, so that what we do is exactly that, but on our tool, right? Like, basically, we are emulating web WhatsApp on our tool. So you go to our tool and you sign up, and we generate a QR code. You scan that QR code with your WhatsApp, and that's how the process works. So you consent after we explain to you what we are going to do, and we detail all the incentives that we're going to give. We generate a QR code that you scan from your WhatsApp for as similar to linking to your computer. So this is your QR code is generated. Then you see a screen with a subset of the WhatsApp groups that you are a part of, right? So here's some example groups. So there's a bunch of groups that are shown, and then some are ticked by default. Some are not allowed. We don't even allow the people to donate them. So here, this number here in parentheses, this is the number of people in that group. So we are not allowing people to donate groups which are small in size, because these are smaller groups which might have private content. So we're not allowing people to by default donate them. But the idea is we concentrate on groups with more than 5 members with a sufficient amount of activity, and users are given a choice. So this is very important. So users can say, okay, I want to donate, groups 1, 2, and 3. I don't want to donate groups 4 and 5, right? Like, so they can choose and say, okay, I don't want to donate these. I want to donate these. Okay. And then based on that, our tool will automatically extract programmatically. So once the user scans the QR code and selects the groups, their part is done. All of this is then done automatically. We're able to get data going back 2 months for each of those groups that the user gave us consent, going forward to the next 2 months. And this is all the 2 months is just a constraint that we put on ourselves as academics. Like we have to follow some, ethical constraints. So we said, okay, we want to minimize the amount of data. And 2 months is just, okay, we do this in April during the election. So we get data going back 2 months, going forward 2 months, until the end of the election. So that's the idea here. We're also getting some other, network related data. So we know who you are in touch with, and who you have chatted with. We also collect, do a lot of anonymization. So no personal information, because all of this has a lot of personal information, phone numbers, names, emails, and so on. No personal information is stored at all. Like any information that is received by us is first anonymized. So, phone numbers are replaced by random string. Emails, names, all of those are replaced by random string. Faces are anonymized. All of that stuff is done before the data is stored on our server. So there's lots of anonymization that is done before the data is being stored. Then we have some survey where we ask questions about the groups that the people donated. Then you receive some money. In our case, we're giving around $10, so which is around 800 rupees or so for doing this process, which takes 5 minutes. Okay, so this is the on the ground how it looks. So this person is the person donating the data. This is our surveyor who's on the field. So this is our a phone which is running our WhatsApp Explorer tool. So this guy is scanning a QR code from his phone to our WhatsApp tool, and then he's able to donate the data. Okay, so like I said, okay, we built this tool, but now we want to deploy this at scale, right? Like we want to get population level estimates, meaning we want to get the prevalence of misinformation overall. And the usual way this is done in survey studies is through a random sample, right? So you go and knock on random doors, and then you get some sample, and then you can use that to get some estimates. Unfortunately, the use of WhatsApp is not randomly distributed, especially in villages in UP, right? And not many people have a smartphone or have internet or have WhatsApp or use WhatsApp actively, right? So there's a bunch of issues like that. So instead, what we're doing is we're recruiting people in villages. So this is like an influencer. So most likely, a local journalist or a local influencer in some way. And then we pay them money and ask them to get us quotas for different types of people. So we say, okay, get us, certain number of young people, old people, people of certain gender, certain caste, certain religions, and so on. So we kind of get a sense of the different quotas for different sets of population. So that way we are able to then reweight and estimate the prevalence of different types of things overall on WhatsApp. Okay, so this is our sampling issue. Now, this data donation model is very generalizable, meaning, we've deployed this in UP in India, but also in many, many other contexts, like in US, in Brazil, Sierra Leone, Colombia, Indonesia. It's a very simple way to replicate this in other contexts. And we have pilots running in many, many other contexts. Again, this is, touch wood, but if this tool works, it is able to solve the problem of collecting data on WhatsApp to a large extent. I'll show you, what types of data we got and what we can do with that stuff and what amount of data is required to get what sorts of insights. But, this is a good way of collecting, data from this otherwise hidden platform like WhatsApp. Okay, so overall, so the India data collection is going on, right? Right now, we have people on the ground. And this is still like old numbers, but now I think we'll have more number, like much more number. And the idea is, during the election, we'll take this up to 3,000 in India. So 3,000 users in India. We had a pilot done in Brazil, around 200 users. And so this is the number of groups that we have until now, 2,600. In India, around 800 in Brazil. This is an ongoing collection, around 5 million messages were collected in India, around 1.6 million in Brazil. Okay. Also, some other information, like I think this is mostly of academic interest, but I'll just quickly go through. Like, so you have, in general, people talk a lot about, oh yeah, people are a part of a large number of groups and in India and things like that. Like anecdotally, again, like we have some evidence here that shows, how many personal chats that people are a part of, how many groups people are a part of, what is the rough group size, the number of messages, average age, and so on. Like, so we have some information on that. Okay. So let's first look at how many groups people are donating for in our sample. So this is, the blue bar is Brazil, the orange bar is India. So on average in India, people have around 16 groups. This is any group that is over 2 members. So, a group is something that is not a personal chat. So, I'm chatting with my friend, that's not a group. If there's more than 2 people in it, that is what we consider a group. So on average, there are 16 groups that people are a part of. So the groups which are eligible, meaning groups which have more than 5 members and certain activity, these are what we call eligible groups for donation. So these are around 3, and most of the people are donating. Most of the groups that they're eligible for. So the amount of groups that they're unselecting is at most 1. Like, so we are getting most of the eligible data from most of the participants. Okay. In terms of age versus number of groups donated, again, blue bars are Brazil, orange bars are India. Let's look at the orange bars for now. Younger people have lesser number of groups and are donating lesser number of groups. Older people are donating much, much more number of groups. So, younger people are donating 2 groups on average. Older people are donating 6 groups on average. So there's many, many more groups that older people are giving us. Okay, in terms of number of groups donated by demographics, so we have caste-based, religion-based, and location-based, city, town, or village. In general, upper caste people have more groups, they're donating more groups. Hindus have more groups, they're donating more groups compared to Muslims, a lot more. City people have more groups and are donating more groups. Okay. Also, on average, these groups are large in size. So even though people are donating only 2 or 3 groups, these groups are very large in size. So the rough size, median of these groups is around 100. So which is not at least the way I use WhatsApp, but a lot of people are a part of a lot of these very large groups. So, over 100 members in India, 71 in Brazil. Okay, in terms of the types of content, so this is, either if it's a text message, images or stickers, audio, video, and things like that. One thing that's interesting is the overall, only 47% is text messages. The remaining 53 is images, video, documents, audio, and so on, stickers, and so on. Right? Indians send a lot more images, so much, much more compared to Brazil. 40% of the content is images, and there's small amounts of audio and video. But again, at this scale, like where we're talking millions of messages, this is still a large number of messages, which are videos and audio. Okay, we also have indicators of how viral the content is, meaning, how many times it was forwarded. So if use WhatsApp, so WhatsApp indicates this, okay, how many times it was forwarded. Either it is forwarded or forwarded many times, but WhatsApp keeps track of how many times it is forwarded, so we can get that data. So on average, again, like Indians forward a lot more than, a comparative sample compared to Brazil. So, 76% of the messages are not forwarded, but, 16% are forwarded at least once. And this is very important. So this is forwarded many times. Again, you might get these messages which have either forwarded or forwarded many times. If it's any of these, it's labeled forwarded. If it's this, like forwarded 5 or more times, it's labeled forwarded many times. And roughly 1% of the messages are forwarded many times. So this is the viral content of WhatsApp. So that's only around 1% of the entire sample. Okay, so now let's look at the content. So what kinds of content do we have? So we have, for all these groups, all the messages that were shared in these groups. Particularly, we are interested in viral content or content that was forwarded many times in these groups. So this is because forwarded many times means, it was forwarded in a hop, in a chain of 5. Like, so, I sent it to my friend sent it to someone, they sent it to someone, like a chain of 5. A chain of 5 in a network is a lot of people. So it does not mean that only 5 people saw it. It could potentially mean that millions of people saw it. Like, so forwarded many times means this is a very, very viral piece of content. A lot of people would have seen this. So that's why we focus mainly on these forwarded many times messages. So what we did is we manually annotated around 2,000 pieces of viral content, like this is forwarded many times content, particularly from the India dataset. And I'm going to focus only on the India dataset for now. And so this was done by a fact checker who was coding the content. This was done before the current elections. This is October to January earlier this year. Okay, so this is the main slide which talks about the overall prevalence. So like I said, like we can now get estimates of the overall population level prevalence. So I'm going to talk about these 3 categories, even though we had annotations done for a bunch of other categories as well, like religious, how political is it, like how much of it is good morning messages and a bunch of stuff. I'm going to talk about only these 3 categories. Okay, the first one is misinformation. So out of all the messages at population level, the prevalence of misinformation in viral messages is 12%. Okay, so this is 1 in 8 messages that are viral in our sample is misinformation. Okay, so again, for context, is this number high or low? This is very high, actually, compared to other platforms. Like, for instance, there's equivalent studies done in the US on Facebook and Twitter that show that misinformation is usually 1 to 2%, right? Like something like that, a very, very low fraction. But here it's much higher. Obviously, I mean, we are dealing with a separate special type of sample. WhatsApp is very different. There's no moderation and so on. Like, so it's not really comparable, but this is a very high number. Again, like this is, messages that were being forwarded many times by people themselves. So there are no algorithms, there's no bots on WhatsApp. So it's all organic promotion. Like people are forwarding these, and 1 in 8 viral messages that people are receiving is misinformation. That's very problematic. Okay, let's move on to even more problematic stuff. The amount of hate speech. So hate speech is defined as speech that, there's a definition for that we use. It's just, speech that attacks people, that might cause some sort of offline violence. This is around 10% of all the viral content that we annotated. So that means 1 in 10 messages that people are forwarding virally on WhatsApp is hate speech. Again, this is extremely high. For context, the amount of hate speech on a platform like Twitter or Facebook is like 0.01%, right? Like, so this is 1,000 times more than that, right? Obviously, again, the context is different. WhatsApp, there's no encrypt, there's no moderation, so nobody is removing, hate speech content. On Facebook or Twitter, there is moderation. People are removing that sort of content, but still, people forwarding this type of content organically, that's very troubling. 1 in 10 messages being hate speech. Also, for comparison, there was research done in the US on a far-right social network. It's called Gab. Gab is like the free speech bastion where anyone can say anything. It's mostly just, the far right in the US there. Most of them are, direct, openly racist, but there the prevalence of hate speech was around 2%, right? Like, so again, not exactly comparable, but like still, like you get a sense, like this is very, very high. Okay, the final finding is about propaganda. The amount of propaganda, most of this being one-sided, for one political party, is around 8%. Again, this is very, very high. 1 in 12 messages that people receive is propaganda, like propaganda supporting a specific political party. Again, for context, the amount of news that people consume, I don't have numbers for India, unfortunately, for any of these because there's no or not much research for India. In the US, the amount of news that people consume is very, very low. It's similar in India. Most people don't consume news. But the amount of propaganda here is much, much higher than the amount of news in general that people consume.
So is there an overlap between misinformation and propaganda that you have found? Or
so these are not distinct categories. So misinformation could be the same. I mean, there's lots of overlap between misinformation and propaganda, misinformation and hate speech and propaganda, and so on. Roughly, the amount of overlap is around 25%. So 25% between misinformation and hate speech. So around 25% of the misinformation also contains hate speech. One small thing is we need to put this in context. First thing, we're looking at viral content on WhatsApp. So this is only 1% of the entire sample, right? So this does not, what this does not show you is that it doesn't mean that 12% of the content that a person is getting is misinformation. It just means 12% of the viral content that people are seeing is misinformation. So that's very important. So it's overall very rare, right? So it's not like, I'm drowning in misinformation, but the amount of misinformation that is viral is very high, like it's disproportionately viral. That's problematic. And these numbers for hate speech and propaganda are extremely high. Again, for being organically viral, this is very important. Like WhatsApp is a platform where the users are making choices. There's no way of algorithmically promoting, or there's no other factors here. This is users themselves. And again, like just for context, the users that we recruited, these are normal people who are, we just went to villages and recruited people. These are not necessarily, BJP supporters. These are not necessarily extremist Hindu viewpoints or something. Like, so these are, and again, at this scale, like where we're dealing with like thousands of people, it's very concerning. I mean, this is what normal people are getting on WhatsApp, really. So this is a reflection of what we are consuming on WhatsApp. Again, in this specific state, in the specific regions where we did the study, but that's still very important. This is organically viral. Another important thing that we realized is how much of hate is very in a coded way, right? Like we call this fear speech, right? So instead of saying something hateful directly, you say, okay, Muslims must be killed. People don't say that. Like they say these things in a very coded way, which is what we call fear speech. So this is speech that tries to instill fear among the population about, a specific community. So things like, this is an example of hate speech, right? Like, so, I hate, so something like, there's celebrations in Agra when Pakistan won the cricket match, and these are traitors. I hate Islam. That sort of stuff. It's explicitly saying, Islam is bad. Like Muslims are traitors. That's clearly clearly blaming a community. So in this other message, so here it says, in 1378, the part of India separated and became an Islamic nation named Iran. That's not true. And now other regions of India are on the verge of becoming an Islamic state. We have to educate Hindus. Hindus should be united today. And these are kinds of messages that are very common, right? And this is very explicitly framed in a way that does not explicitly say anything hateful, but is trying to consolidate the sort of Hindu vote, right? Like, and there's, lots of examples like this, like, fear induced by using past events, fear induced by referring to present events, things like, oh, look at what's happening in Hyderabad, or by cultural references. Most of these are false, like, some of these might be true, but again, taken out of context. Or fear induced by speculation of dominance. Again, like this is, we've been doing this research for like 3-4 years, and we see this today, like just 2 days ago, what the guy said, right? And this is very prevalent. This is not in this data set, it's from an older data set, but still, like it's very, very common. And we have some research on like how you can identify some of these automatically and things like that. So that's one thing about like particular about hate speech. Another thing is the role of these, so we are not necessarily studying just the BJP groups. We are studying all groups. But like we saw, the role of propaganda is very important. But specifically, the BJP groups play a specific role. Like there's out of the 2,600, maybe 500 or so, this is around 20%, is BJP related groups. So these are not necessarily official BJP party groups, but they could be, your Karyakarta might have created something, or a leader, local leader might have created something. So these are roughly affiliated. We cannot say that this is a BJP group just by the title, or, we cannot make an affiliation, but roughly these are used to create a sense of community, and they are used to manipulate other platforms that we can observe, right? Like, and being part of WhatsApp groups like these. And this is this cross-platform information campaign. So using your WhatsApp group infrastructure to mobilize users to other platforms. So things like this trend alert thing. Many of us might have seen this, but we've studied this, using data. So the idea here is, this is all from 2019. We haven't studied this in the recent context, but there are researchers who are studying this in the recent context. In the 2024 election. So these are Surya Matu from Princeton. If you're interested, I can give you his contact. So the idea is, there's messages sent on these WhatsApp groups that the party runs. This is not just the BJP doing it now; everyone is doing it. But this is really perfected by the BJP. The idea is, okay, let's you have all these tens of thousands of WhatsApp groups that you can use as coordination machines. And they say, okay, let's together trend this particular hashtag to show our support for this leader. And the idea is you create a bunch of tweets that are sample tweets that are put in a Google Doc. And the Google Doc looks like this, right? Like, so it says, okay, this is the hashtag, this is the date, and this is the time. And these are all, sample tweets. Now, what people need to do is just copy paste these tweets from this document onto their Twitter profile, right? Like, so the idea is, because you have this large ecosystem of groups, you're now able to mobilize a lot of people, and who just at a particular time copy paste some of these tweets onto their profiles. And like, let's say you take the first tweet from this Google Doc, a lot of people just have copy pasted the same exact tweet onto their Twitter profile. Some of them might have changed something, right? Like, so some of them might add, images, some of them have added like usernames and, things like that, mentions of other users. The same thing, like the second tweet, again, hundreds of tweets for the same exact tweet that is copied from that Google Doc, right? Again, this is very, very effective, right? Like, so we monitored 75 such campaigns. Again, because we were a part of these groups, we could see these Google Docs, we could read what was the content of those Google Docs, we could see how that was shared on Twitter. So we monitored 75 such Google Docs, and around 69, so which is 92% of these were trending on the day they were supposed to be. Right? So it's an extremely well-oiled machine, works really well. Even today, like if you look at Twitter and there's a party supporting hashtag that is trending, and like I said, it's not just BJP now, like others have also started doing this. It just shows how shitty these Twitter trending things are in India, especially. Like, in the US, they're much more high quality. They curate them. In India, nobody cares, especially Twitter doesn't care. Like, we've done some analysis of how many such campaigns were run. This is already 2 years old. Like, thousands of campaigns like this have been run. Every day there's, one or two trends like this that are manipulated. The main thing is, okay, who cares about Twitter? At least I personally don't think Twitter is much of an influence. What happens is, around it's trending. Twitter marks it as trending. It uses that in its ranking. It promotes that hashtag widely. So new people, let's say I am not a part of these Google Docs, I haven't seen these, but then I see a hashtag, Modi mein hai dum, and I say, oh, wow, okay, it's something about Modi. I click on it and I get exposed to tweets from this, right? Because Twitter is promoting this and algorithmically amplifying this. And a lot of people, add new content because the reason why this algorithmic amplification is happening. So this is very important because there's this use of this closed platform which not many of us can access. Luckily we were part of these groups where we found these Google Docs, but otherwise it's very hard to access these, and these can impact other platforms, and Twitter is amplifying these without any consequence. Okay, the final part is about what can we do. So fact checking as a solution, okay, fact checking is one of the solutions that probably there are journalists and fact checkers in this meeting. Fact checking is almost non-existent in these groups that we are monitoring, right? Like, so there's no links for any popular fact checkers. Like, there's no mentions of corrections to misinformation. Like, if someone posts misinformation, the chance that someone says this is false is very, very, very rare. Like, out of the hundreds of misinformation we are monitoring, maybe there are one or two instances that happening. That does not happen, right? And a lot of the misinformation, around 40% of the misinformation I showed you, is already fact checked. So this is just the same information spreading over and over and over again. This is a very popular example. This is, from some funeral. It shows, Rahul Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi showing, praying like Muslims. So it says, okay, these guys are Muslims, whatever. This keeps spreading again and again and again. Like, this was fact checked so many times, like starting in 2015, going all through the years. But this just does not stop spreading, because again, there's no way these fact-checking narratives are reaching these people. Okay, why does it matter? Because of encryption, there's no moderation, so the same misinformation spreads over and over. And a lot of this content is just reshared out of context, so which is very easily debunkable, but there's no ways in which this can be done easily. And especially in the context of this Israel-Hamas thing, there's so much of violence and graphic videos without any consequences. If you share some of these violent content on Facebook or Twitter, your account will get banned. But in this case, nothing is happening because WhatsApp does not see the content. They cannot do anything, right? So in terms of solutions for stopping misinformation, on platforms like Facebook or Twitter, you just hire a lot of moderators who do the moderation, right? And you do some AI on top of the moderators' labels. It works decently well. It's not foolproof, but it works. Like I said, the amount of hate speech on a platform like WhatsApp is on Facebook is very low. So, but WhatsApp is closed, so there's no way of doing central content moderation. The current model is, having these tip lines where, this is, users send in tips. So you have a WhatsApp bot or a number corresponding to a newsroom or a fact checker, and people send in these tips there. But this just does not scale. WhatsApp ran these very large tip lines during the last election. They have advertised these extensively. It just does not work. It just does not scale to the volume of WhatsApp, especially in a context like India. So one thing that can be done is, use, again, this is a shameless plug to some of our tools. Obviously, there is more stuff to be done here, but one way to do this is you can use some of our tools to automatically monitor small samples, right? So if you're a local journalist and for instance, you want to monitor a few dozen groups, usually people do this manually where they join some groups and are able to find these content manually. But we have tools that make it very simple. It takes 5 minutes of your time, and we are able to provide you some dashboards that automatically monitor and get you what is content that is virally spreading on the groups that you're monitoring. And the ways these work is there's a dashboard like this. I'll show you the dashboard in a second. It was used very widely during the 2018-2022 Brazil election, last election in India. Not during this election because of some privacy reasons, but there is a chance of using some of our tooling to actually monitor a large number of WhatsApp groups if you want. So let me just quickly share our dashboard, the way this looks, and I'll conclude after that. So this is our dashboard. So this is from our UP data collection. So it has multiple tabs here. So the first is forwarded. So this is, all these are content that is forwarded many times in the groups that we are a part of, right? So all of these messages have been forwarded many times on WhatsApp. And if you're just browsing through it, you can already see a lot of really popular tropes. Okay, for instance, this is the usual, child kidnapping one. I mean, this has been spreading since the last 10 years. This child pretty sure she's not missing right now. She's been missing. I don't know. She was missing at some time, maybe. But these kinds of messages are very common. Obviously, there's a lot of things like mocking Rahul Gandhi and your usual anti-opposition propaganda, anti-Muslim propaganda, a bunch of stuff. Like there's a lot of Rajiv Gandhi and many messages that were shared over and over. Like, for instance, this message attacking Muslims was shared over nine unique chats over 10 times. But this was starting in November, and it's still spreading. Like, it just got reshared again, probably in the context of like this Modi speech, where it's being shared again in an anti-Muslim context. And anyway, so the idea is, if you have a list of WhatsApp groups that you're monitoring, or you can recruit, a few people, let's say a small number of people, 10, 20 people, and get their WhatsApp groups into a system like this, we can create a dashboard particularly for you that enables you to quickly monitor like what is spreading virally in the context that you want to monitor and you want to write about. Like there's a lot of stuff that becomes very clearly evident once you look at it in this kind of a dashboard. Like, because so this is only the content that is all forwarded many times. And again, like you can see some of the groups. Like if I click on this, this is a regular group will share something pro-Hindu. Let's see if there's any. This one. Let's see. Like the types of groups here are Bajrang Dal, nationalist groups, caste groups, and so on. It says Brahman Ekta Manch if people don't read Hindi. Then there's also things like images, videos, messages, URL, audio. All of these are within our data set. How popular are different messages? So, for instance, this message was shared 12 times, 100 times in 12 different chats, right? Like, and all of these are the chats. It was shared like a lot of times, and a lot of this content is just local content, like content about gods and so on. But again, like this might give us a sense of like how so for instance, this guy eating some chicken or something is being spread like a lot of times, is 7 times in all of these probably very religious groups, so on, right? Like, so this gives you a sense of like not just the viral stuff, but also stuff that is popular within the groups that we are monitoring. So that's our dashboard. So just to quickly summarize, we don't necessarily look at like encrypted platforms because it's very difficult. But some of our tools make it easy, right? Like, and accessible to do this type of work. And we are able to identify content that is virally spreading on WhatsApp. And one of the findings is misinformation is not very common, but is widely spread. So it's very viral. So one important thing here is, to end on a positive note, WhatsApp is very well designed to prevent large-scale misinformation spreading, right? Like, so it's not a medium where you can broadcast a lot of misinformation easily, right? Like, so you cannot click a button and reach 1 million people on WhatsApp. That's very hard to do. You can do it on YouTube or Facebook, things like that. You have broadcast mechanisms. So WhatsApp, you don't. So even if the infrastructure is built, like if you have a lot of groups, the impact only comes when the content gets viral. I mean, it's unfortunate or very clever that one political party has figured out how to do it and is able to get their content viral. But it's not that easy. But however, like, even if you do small scale influence operations, like let's say you're a candidate and you want to reach a lot of people, if you have the good type of content, because trust plays a big role on WhatsApp, so you usually get content from people you trust and people you know on WhatsApp, so people believe in that content a lot more. So if bad actors can see the small sample of with content, it's very difficult to measure the prevalence or estimate impact. Even our tool is only limited in that context. So thanks a lot. So if you're technically bent, like we have some code out there. This is on request for now. So just reach out to me in this email if you want. Like, I can share the code right now. It's only for researchers and journalists / fact checkers, but hopefully we'll share it more publicly after the election. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kiran. This was really good. We have some questions. The first one is the 1-2% misinformation, hate speech on other platforms a fraction of viral messages, or is it the overall messages on the platform?
It's overall messages, but I mean they are subset in a specific way as well. Like so, it's not easy to compare like this with that. Like, but yeah, these are different samples for sure.
Okay. This was from Shashank. The other question is by Astha. She asked, was fear speech also included in the hate speech section? The stats for
which? Okay. Yeah.
Meena Menon has asked, is moderation of WhatsApp a solution?
Okay, with encryption, there's no way of doing like massive moderation. Right? Like WhatsApp cannot see the contents, and they cannot do much moderation. So their levers are very limited, like the kinds of things that they can do, which are like, increasing friction, like, they've been playing with this sort of how virally you can forward and, things like that. And that is okay, works to a certain extent. But for, when you have a very well resourced actor like this party that has hundreds of thousands of people who can manually forward, like, okay, doesn't really scale and work to that. Okay, in terms of other ways of moderation, like they are paying a lot of money to fact checkers and fact checking organizations to do these sorts of tip lines. But again, in reality, the people who consume misinformation and the people who send these tips to journalists or fact checkers are very different groups, right? And so the reach of fact checking is very, very low. Like, the people do not consume these sorts of fact check content. So there should be some other way of doing this moderation. And it's mostly like if you ask me, it's mostly about decentralized local fact checking, like people like us writing more about like, okay, this is what the narrative is spreading on WhatsApp, not just a top down thing, but it should be much more local, like meaning you have some local journalists who are writing things about their community, and our tools kind of help in that kind of thing where you can just get data from 30 users and understand, okay, what is the information spreading in this village? You can correct that, right? Like, so that's sort of more bottom up kind of fact checking, and training people to provide them with these tools to be able to do this automatically. I think that's a better solution. But right now, I mean, it's very, very important for us to, and for me as a researcher to be very clear about this. Like, encryption is very important, right? Like, and one thing that I have to be very careful with, I am very careful with when I'm talking about this is, we don't want a solution that breaks encryption. And a simple solution that the government will say is break encryption. We can solve all these problems, but that will bring in new types of problems. So we can think of, and we are working on, like, and WhatsApp is working on other solutions, but it's not a trivial solution. It may not work for all cases. It might take some time, but I think it's fine like that.
Sarah Masood has asked, have you been able to use the dataset curated in your dashboard and then fact check them so that similar messages in future can be fact checked faster?
Yeah. So that's the idea. Like, so we, at least during the election, we wanted to do some sort of live fact checking, but because of practical and other reasons, it did not happen. But that's what is going to happen. Like in the future, maybe after the election, we have all this data, we have content that is fact checked, so we can know, how much of the reach was like once it was fact checked, things like that. But currently, it's mostly just a research project. We have not, we've not deployed this, and there's no live fact checking going on here.
Another question, how capable is current legislative framework to take actions against the misinformation or hate speech circulated on WhatsApp?
So that's the like line that you have to toe very carefully, right? Like, I mean, the legislation obviously, maybe a good thing in certain contexts, but in many contexts, like especially in a context like India, I don't have like really a lot of belief in the legislation. I mean, even if it is done with a very good motive, like can be misused, would be misused, has been misused, and so on. So right now, there is a lot of push to say, okay, give me the who originated this, right? Like, so that sort of thing. It is technically feasible, even in an encrypted setup, to identify who started a specific thing. Like, but a lot of those like really are a slippery slope because a big problem with working with this type of data is context is what matters, right? Like, so there are hundreds of different types of groups, different types of social contexts in which messages are shared. And you cannot say, okay, a message that was shared first by one group is malicious in its intent, even though it might end up being malicious down the line, right? Like, so that does not mean that, if you identify somehow the starter of this information, they're somehow the culprit. So that's not, and that's one of the primary legislative pursuits that the government is doing. So, WhatsApp, give us the originator information. That's not a solution. So, yeah, I don't think the legislative discussion is really going in the right direction.
S. Sarkar has asked, are your data sets available to researchers outside your research group?
Basically, it's just we are still collecting the data, and eventually we will release some version of this data, but not like the full data sets. Again, like one of the big problems with releasing the entire data set is anonymization. I mean, we are doing a lot of anonymization already, and if you notice on the dashboards, like all the faces will be blurred and all of that stuff, like even, your typical, God faces, all of those are blurred by default. But the main problem is like a conversation is extremely hard to anonymize technically, right? Like, so even though, I may not say, hey, Tapasya, do this, like, but if you read the entire conversation, you could probably identify that this is a group of journalists who are discussing this, right? Like, so, and that's very hard to anonymize. And so we really don't have technical means to do that at this moment. So that's why we are really careful with releasing this data publicly. I don't know if there's any ideas in that space on releasing this data or collaborating in a way that is responsible and reasonable. I'm happy to hear that, but yeah, we don't have clear ideas right now.
There is a question. Do you have any figures on percentage of WhatsApp users in India disaggregated by rural, urban areas?
No, I don't think that kind of figure exists. Like, at least a believable figure. Like, I mean, there are like overall numbers, like, I don't know, 600 million Indians use WhatsApp, but I don't have like how much of that is rural. I mean, there's also divisions on how much of internet access is rural, urban, and things like that. So you can potentially use some of that to get information on this. But the idea for our tool is also we're sampling both urban, rural, semi-urban, and so on. So we kind of cover like different spaces as well.
One question that somebody, Shweta Singh, has asked, and I think it's interesting. Can you please share more on how you succeeded in joining groups? I mean, who has the right to permit outsiders to join such groups? Was it difficult sometimes? What was your experience? I am trying to understand the ethical dimensions of this data collection.
That's very good. Like, so one thing is, okay, this is not joining groups. So this is basically, imagine like, you have logged in to a web WhatsApp on a laptop, right? Like, so you're using WhatsApp on your phone, but you also have your WhatsApp on the browser, right? On a laptop. So what we are doing is exactly, acting as if there's this another browser, which is on our server where we are monitoring these groups. So basically, we're not joining these groups. We just get a view. So the user is authenticating us to get a view of the groups that they are a part of, right? And one of the biggest ethical gaps in this research, and that has been something that we've struggled with. We've had a lot of discussion with our ethics review boards, and finally we got approval for is. So we're getting data from groups, even though only one person has given us consent. Like there might be 100 other people who are not giving consent, but we're still getting data from that group, right? Just because one person has given us consent. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Part of the reason why we are looking at only this viral content is because we only want to look at content that is in general popular and not something that is very specific to a certain group or sent by a specific user. So we are not storing any personal information of any members, including the person who consented. And we are only looking at content that is virally spreading on WhatsApp, even though we are storing all the other information because it helps us in the context. So if you look at a video, you need to know what is the context in which it was shared. So that's why we are collecting all the other data, but we're still only looking at viral content or content that is otherwise like widely spread on WhatsApp. So yeah, this is how we are managing the ethics of this. And in terms of how hard this was, this is very non-trivial. Like we had to, I mean, this entire project is probably 2 years of work and a lot of money testing out things that will work. And especially like, if you're doing this on the ground, like convincing people that this is, real, and this is real research and it's valuable, all of that, despite like us paying the participants, compensating them for their time, it's not easy. And yeah, I mean, it worked because of a lot of efforts and a lot of like clear protocols on what to do, how to do it, and learning over time.
Shubham Sampath Kumar has asked, what if the hate speech are being spread through chatbots?
Bots on WhatsApp are not that common. Again, I might be wrong. Like maybe, there's something that I don't know. But in general, WhatsApp is very good at detecting automated activity, coordinated activity. So that sort of very large scale bot activity is very, very rare on WhatsApp, especially, the cost to your account getting banned is a new phone number, which is not an easy thing to replace, right? Like, and WhatsApp, like they have statistics, they ban like tens of millions of accounts every month. So they're very aggressive in that. Just try like using a bot on WhatsApp. Like it really does not work. They have these business accounts, business bots, which are now, they're slowly introducing them. That is causing a lot of spam on WhatsApp, but that is a different game. Like, and yeah, we don't see a lot of that on WhatsApp. Yeah.
Arnav Arora has asked, what about device moderation? Do you see any scope there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like actually, I mean, we have some proposals for looking at like, on-device models that work, within the device to do some sort of fact checking, like especially if it is already fact check content. But I mean, it's technically possible. We have some apps that already are testing some of those sorts of metrics, but practically they're not possible. Like, and ethically also they're dubious, especially also given like all the political legal frameworks that exist. Like for instance, okay, think of it, right? Like, so now if WhatsApp can scan the content that you're receiving and for misinformation, like what if the government says, okay, this video by this politician is fake news, include that in your fake news set. Like all the people who receive that information will then see, oh, this is misinformation, right? Like, so how do you deal with those sorts of things of polluting the set of fact check content? Or like just imagine, like I have a Mac laptop or a Windows laptop, and now Windows, scanning your computer and saying, hey, you have porn stored on your on your laptop or something. So again, think of like what are the consequences of actually implementing something like this. So that's the problem. Like it's more about like ethics and privacy and those sorts of debates, which are much harder than the technical challenge.
Another question is, does your model capture education level of content consumers?
So we have a lot of demographics. So age, gender, religion, caste, education, income, where they live, like residential type. So yeah, all of this information is in the data set.
There's one more question, which is basically about data harvesting and the ethics around it. So someone's asking, Ebin is asking that you take consent from all the group members, and what is the thought process behind paying for it?
So I think I mentioned this, right? Like, so we're not getting consent from all the participants in the group, which is a huge gap in our ethics protocol. Like, but we have like, the way we are analyzing this data really takes that into account, and we're only analyzing the private groups, the viral content. In terms of compensating the participants, obviously, I mean, this is we're taking their time with the data collection and the survey that we're doing. So obviously, we are going to compensate them. In terms of whether that is going to bias the sample that they give us, we have other, like for instance, the one that we're doing in Sierra Leone, this is with some economists, and there we are not compensating the people. So maybe there's some other comparative ways in which you can look at like whether these two samples differ. I mean, these are different contexts, but I just feel it just is a good thing to compensate. So yeah.
One last question. There's a follow-up from Arnav. What role do you think the sampling bias of the data collection process affects the final results of the analysis?
We've tried our best to enable like collecting a large representative sample, representative in certain dimensions. Like I said, we have all these demographic variables which we're filling quotas for, like age, gender, not gender, caste, religion, and so on. And so you can use that to debias. Obviously, there is a lot of self-selection, and this compensation question comes there into play. Like, okay, people might be donating because we're paying them, or may not be donating because we're not paying them enough, or people might be selecting groups that they think are less problematic and things like that. So there's all that selection bias. But at least data at this scale, where you're able to get these sorts of estimates and reweight them, provides one view. To a certain extent, it is a lower bound of what is actually there, because we're not getting all the data. We're only getting a subset of the data. So I think it is a good starting point to think of these more questions about, okay, is this a problem on WhatsApp? Is this, what do we do? How do we do moderation? Is encryption bad? All of those discussions, to base these on some data-driven evidence rather than some anecdotal evidence.
We should now wrap this up, otherwise questions will keep coming. Kiran has anyway mentioned his email ID there. If you have any follow-ups, any questions, do reach out to him. I'm sure he'll take out some time to respond to these questions. Please write to Kiran. And on behalf of everyone, on behalf of the Reporters Collective, I thank Kiran for this session. This has been very intense, very difficult to navigate as well for some of us. Hope we get to a solution. Although you say that there are no easy solutions. Thank you so much. And lastly, do consider donating to us. This is all possible because of your support. Thank you so much.